what were the main outcomes and the main thoughts that you concluded from this experience for yourself?
One of the main things that I realized, and there's a story somewhat behind it. It's in my book Thunderdog, which is one of the books that people can get. Another one is called Live Like a Guide Dog, and then there's a one for youth called Running with Roselle. But what I learned is, don't worry about what you can't control. We worry about so many things, and most of them we don't have any control over. 90 to 95% of all the things that we worry about are things over which we have no control, and all we do is drive ourselves to fear. And we need to get out of that habit. We what if everything to death, as opposed to dealing with the fact that there are things that we need to worry about because we have some control over them. There are a lot of other things that are going on that we don't have control over, and we don't need to worry about them, but we do. And so what I've learned is that in reality, you have to focus on the things that you can control, and the rest will take care of itself.
That's such an important concept indeed, and I do think that many people are, struggling to properly realize that. But what would be your advice? What would be your suggestion to achieve this effect and change this thought concept? Because these sort of mechanisms, these sort of thought mechanisms that you've mentioned are very obviously deeply caught within us, and sometimes it's very difficult to overcome this sort of intuitive way of thinking. How would you say this is something that we can manage?
Well, we can manage it. Again, probably the biggest thing is don't worry about the things that you don't have control over. Don't what if everything to death. Don't sit there and say, well, what if this happens? What am I going to do? The fact is, you don't have any control over this happening. So you need to focus on the things that you can and let the rest take care of itself. It doesn't mean that you're not aware of them, but you don't have to worry about things over which you don't have control. You don't have to let it drive you into a state of fear. You can learn to focus on the things that are truly relevant to you. We should learn to be more open to trust. In our society, we basically all think that, I can't trust this person. This person has a hidden agenda. They're going to rip me off if I trust them. You don't know that. You need to be open to trust. And if somebody earns your trust and they earn your trust, that's great. If they don't earn your trust, then you move on. But you don't fear everyone just because they're human. Those are lessons that I learned from working with dogs, and those are part of the lessons that there are in Live Like a Guide Dog.
Wow. Yeah, these are certainly things that are worth thinking and reading about, and just what a person to really concentrate on. So obviously you've mentioned how you sort of switched your corporate job for being a public speaker and talking about your experiences in teaching people. How was the process of you deciding to express your thoughts and your experiences in a book? I'm really curious to hear how did that happen for you.
Well, it actually started in December of 2002. Roselle was being honored at the American Kennel Club Canine Eukanuba Award dog show in Florida. While we were down there, I met a gentleman. His name is George Berger. He was the publisher of the American Kennel Club Gazette. And George said, you should write a book. And I hadn't thought about writing a book, but he said, you should. Well, I started thinking about it. I started working a little bit on it. I didn't know how to proceed. Somebody that George knew said, you should write a business book. And I said, no, I don't want to write a business book. I want to write a book for the general public. And eventually in 2010, I received a phone call from a woman named Susie Flory. And Susie was writing a book called Dog Tales. It was 17 different stories about dogs that have done things. And she wanted to include Roselle. So she asked if I would tell her my story, which I did in detail. And when I was done, she said, you got to write your own book, and I'll help you write it because I'm a professional writer. Well, we started working on it. Her agent um, said that he would consider a proposal. He became my agent. He said, I don't want a September 11th book, though. And I said, I don't want a September 11th book either. I want a book that will teach people things. It's going to talk about my story on September 11th, but there's a lot more to it. We wrote a proposal. He loved it. And literally within a week, he had a contract for us with Thomas Nelson Publishing. Thomas Nelson is now part of HarperCollins. And then we worked on the book, and it was published in August of 2011. And it was published on the 2nd of August. And on the 11th of August, we learned that it already was on the New York Times bestseller list. Wow. And so it was there. 2 years later, we published Running with Roselle. And then in August of 2024, August 20th, we published Live Like a Guide Dog. And so all the books are out there. They're available on Amazon or wherever people get books. The only thing I would ask is if anybody gets a copy of the book, any of the books, please go to Amazon and Reddit and give them reviews. People want to hear and see reviews of books that they're considering buying. So I always ask people to review the books. Anyway, so that's kind of how it happened, and we've been dealing with the books ever since.
Wow. How was the, writing process for you, and sort of reminiscing and going through all of these experiences to put them on a paper? Was something completely analytical, or was there, a moment of realization of some sort?
Oh, I don't know that it was all analytical or all moments of realization. It was me sharing my life, and so there was a lot of work that went into it, a lot of thought, and I learned a lot about writing. I learned a lot about myself. One of the things that I tell people, they say, well, have you ever gone and gotten any counseling? And I said, no, I've not. But what I did get were literally hundreds of calls from the media. So I've been asked every question basically you can imagine by the members of the press and the media. So I've been asked incredibly dumb questions. I've been asked incredibly intelligent questions. So they all taught me a little bit more about me, and they helped me think and work through stuff, which was great. Fantastic. And then, of course, speaking, as I do, that also helps.
Yeah. Can you give me an example? I'm very curious to hear about some dumb questions that you got.
What were you doing in the World Trade Center in the first place, even though it had been published all over the place? How could you possibly know what was going on? You couldn't have known, as I mentioned before. Yeah. Those are a couple.
These are great examples. Yeah, I think they definitely prove the concept. And another thing, I guess at that point you've told your story a million times. How is that for you in general at this point of time? Does it get tedious? Does it get boring? Or do you see the purpose behind telling your perspective on this sort of an experience?
Oh, I don't think it gets tedious. I think it's exactly as you said. I think that there's a reason for it. As Alexander Graham Bell once said, when God closes a door, he opens a window. And the fact is that I was led to take up this career of speaking. I think that with everyone who undergoes any kind of experience, like the World Trade Center, and people ask me all the time, well, do you feel survivor's guilt? You stated you're alive and other people died. And I said, look, I didn't have any control over that. I wasn't going to stay up in the building until it fell. I didn't know it was going to collapse. So I didn't have any control over that. But what I do have control over is what I do with my life because of it. And so I chose to begin speaking, and it is what I do. My wife passed away after 40 years of marriage in 2022, so I continue to speak. And the reality is that for me, I know that if I can help people, if I can make a difference in their lives, then I want to do it. And that's what I work to do.
That's yeah. I think that's incredibly commendable to to sort of realize your responsibility and the way you can impact positively other people and to actually commit to it. So,
Well, I think it's important, and I think more people should do it.
mhm.
It is how I earn my living. Um, I work with people when they want to hire a speaker. We talk about budgets. We talk about what they can afford, um, and I work with them, and we make it happen. When I travel somewhere to speak, I don't charge by the talk. We agree on a speaker fee, and I'll do anything that they need me to do while I'm there. And that oftentimes is giving more than one presentation, which is okay.
Mhm.
And we do also take books to sell.
Fantastic. And what would you say are your favorite aspects of having the opportunity to, to talk about your thoughts in face to face in the live setting with people?
I think for me, the most fantastic part is I get to meet people from all walks of life, from all sorts of different kinds of environments. I love it. I love traveling to educate people. Um, and I'm always looking, and occasionally it happens. It hasn't happened for a little while yet, but I'm always looking for somebody to ask a question I haven't heard before. And sometimes that's the game that I play with myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens. but but for me, I just enjoy getting to meet so many different people from so many different kinds of environments. It's great.
Fantastic. And one of the questions I always ask some of my guests, and I guess it will tie very well to the topic you've mentioned, is what's a question you've never been asked but you've always wanted to answer?
I haven't thought of one. I'm not sure I have one at this point. Um, so I'll leave that to somebody to come up with a question that I haven't been asked. But um, if I've been doing this for such a long time, I don't really have any that stick out in my mind right now.
Yeah.
I'll have to work at it and see if I can come up with one.
Yeah. Are there any topics that you feel passionate about and such that you think you can provide valuable opinions on that people are not that interested in as opposed to others, obviously?
Well, a lot of people don't necessarily know a lot about blindness or people with disabilities, and they're not necessarily fascinated. And then after I talk with them, they think they know a lot. They don't necessarily, unless they really take it to heart. But yeah, I spoke at a book club once, right near where I lived in Northern California, and the people who had me come said everyone in the club has already read Thunderdog, so they want to just talk with you about it. And the first question that somebody asked was, what were you doing in the World Trade Center? I thought they had all read Thunderdog, right? But the bottom line is, for me, my belief is that I'll come up with, and I'll learn at some point some questions that I haven't been asked yet. That'll be fun, and I'll work at it. But for me, I just enjoy having the opportunity to interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so in addition to speaking, as you may know, I have a podcast called Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And the reason it's worded that way is that I've had diversity people on my show, people talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and all that. And mostly when they come on, they talk about sex, gender, sexual orientation, race, and so on. But they never talk about disabilities. And when I ask, why don't you talk about disabilities? They say, well, because that's not a minority. Well, yes, it is. By any standard, it's a minority. If you talk about the traditional disability, the CDC even points it out. And that's why we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I don't put diversity first. I put inclusion first, because you cannot be inclusive if you don't include disabilities. Some people say, well, yeah, we're partially inclusive. No, you either are or you're not. There's no middle ground. And if you are not inclusive, that means you're not dealing with disabilities. If you are inclusive, then among other things, you deal with disabilities.
Why do you think this tendencies happening in terms of inclusive people not actually including all walks of life and getting this sort of distinguish between the different aspects?
Fear. They're afraid of people who are different than they are. They're afraid, oh, I could become like that person. Rather than recognizing you don't have control over that, don't fear it, and don't look horribly at people who are different than you. You know, blind people by so many professionals today are called visually impaired. Think about that. First of all, visually, I don't look different because I'm blind. I don't appear differently because I'm blind. Visually is a stupid term anyway for that. And impaired, I am not simply because I'm blind. Don't compare me with people with all their eyesight and say I'm impaired to them because I can't see and they can. Well, as soon as somebody says that to me, then clearly they're impaired because they can't think and I do. The bottom line is visually impaired is a horrible term. Deaf people learned that some time ago. You talk to a person and you call them hearing impaired and they're liable to hit you in the mouth because they recognize that they're not impaired just because they don't hear as well as other people. They can think well and so on. So it's deaf or hard of hearing, and in the case of blind people, it's blind and low vision, but not visually impaired. But as long as that term is out there, we're considered less than sighted people, and we have to get rid of that term.
Do you think society and people in general are moving towards the direction of properly, having a proper approach to all walks of life rather than distinguishing them in such a manner? Or what's your opinion on the way society operates currently on this topic?
I think we're slowly making progress. Mostly nowadays people say, what's the politically correct term? It's not politically correct. It's not an issue of political correctness. It's an issue of respecting people and recognizing that just because they're different than you, that doesn't mean they're less than you. And I think we're slowly getting there, but we have a long way to go.
Absolutely. To so many different aspects as well, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Right now, what would you say keeps you? It gets you passionate and excited. You know, what sort of things that you do gets you into this sort of creative mood that you're really excited to explore?
I love doing the podcast. I started doing radio when I was at the University of California, Irvine,
nice.
So now I get to do that. And, that's a long time ago. But now I do the podcast. And just today, literally, we published episode 415 since we started in August of 2021. So I love that. I love speaking. I love traveling to speak and meeting people and interacting with people. And here at home, I have my guide dog and a cat, and
Nice.
And they're fun to visit with. So I believe that you have a choice as to how you look at life. I believe that life is an adventure. I believe that life is positive, and I'm not going to allow people who have a negative attitude to bring me down. I won't do that.
Wow, that's such a fantastic and powerful message to spread. I think many people need to, take into consideration your words, because right now, I think the current state of the world is such that it's so difficult to, I guess, miss the missive of life.
Well, on the podcast, we do not talk about politics. And the reason primarily I don't is that people will argue and they don't recognize that it's okay to have differences in opinions.
Yes.
You spend time learning. But that's not what happens with politics. So I just tell people I don't talk about politics because I'm an equal opportunity abuser. But the bottom line is that it's just not one of those things to talk about. And I don't. But we've circled around it in a few times with people from podcasts, and that's okay too. But I think that when people come on my podcast, it is to talk about their stories, and I love to hear stories. As I tell people, if I'm not learning at least as much as anyone else from the podcast, I'm not doing my job well, whatever the story. I believe that people come on this podcast to tell their story, and I want to hear it and learn from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a, awesome approach to have. What's the last story that really made an impression on you?
They all do, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But a week ago, we had a gentleman on who is in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually took 5 minutes during the podcast, because my podcasts are not interviews, they're conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We actually created kind of a real loose advertising campaign for Unstoppable Mindset.
Wow.
And then also I had a woman on who's very much involved in publicity and public relations, and it was fun talking with her. I learned a lot, and I find everyone's stories to be fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it like with many women, they've been abused in some way,
Mm-hmm.
much more than with men,
Mm-hmm.
but they've overcome it. And I think that's the message that they want to convey, and I love to help convey that we can overcome things, and we do.
That's incredibly commendable. Once again, it's such a great approach to have. What's the best thing about podcast as a format for you? What is the thing that it gives you and that the other outlets of your expression can't?
Well, I won't say can't, but the thing
Yeah.
that I get from the podcast is I get to meet so many people and spend time with them and learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And they learn from me too. And sometimes, as I said, since it is a conversation, we have some great discussions,
Mm-hmm.
which I thoroughly enjoy. So I've had so many people on who have so many wonderful things to tell, and I'm grateful for them coming on and telling me and our audience about their experiences and the lessons that they've learned. And we've talked about everything from how to run a business to AI, and as I said, the people who were on last week, advertising and public relations and publicity, and just so many different kinds of things. It's fun.
Amazing. Before we finish off, tell us about your books. Tell us about your podcast. What your books about? Where people can get them? Where people can listen to your podcast?
Sure.
And all of that.
Sure. So there are 3 books. The first one is called Thunderdog: The Story of a Blind Man, His Guide Dog, and the Triumph of Trust at Ground Zero. That was published in 2011. Larry King wrote the foreword for that book.
Wow.
And as I said, it was on the New York Times bestseller list. In 1 week, it was number 1. So it was published. It is available wherever books are sold. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere, your local bookstore. And I hope people will. And as I said, if they do, I hope they'll review it on Amazon and Reddit. Running with Roselle was the story. We wrote it more for youth than for adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of more the story of me growing up and Roselle growing up and how we met. There's a little bit of discussion of the World Trade Center, but it's mainly our lives. That was published in late 2013, the beginning of 2014. And then 10 years later, in August of 2024, we published Live Like a Guide Dog: True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs About Being Brave, Overcoming Adversity, and Moving Forward in Faith. And that's really learning about controlling fear, learning how to deal with life. And it offers lots of life lessons that I learned from all of my guide dogs. I wrote that one with Carrie Wyatt Kent, who was a friend of Susie Flores. And Running with Roselle was written by me and Jeanette Hanscom, who also was a friend of Susie Flores. But the bottom line is that all 3 books are out there. They're available from Amazon. You can get them from wherever books are sold. And I hope people will. I hope people will buy them and that they'll learn from them. If they want to reach out to me after they do, they're welcome to. My website is michaelhingson.com. That's www.hingson.com. MichaelHingson.com. So www.michaelhingson.com. If they want to learn more about Unstoppable Mindset, the podcast, they can search out Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. They can also go to michaelhingson.com/podcast, and all of the podcasts are available there. So again, I hope people will go and listen or watch the podcasts. If they'd like to come on the podcast, please email me. And the best way to email me is speaker, SPEAKER, at Michael Hingson, MichaelHingson.com. Speaker at michaelhingson.com. Love to hear from you. Love to hear from you if you read the books or if you just want to reach out. And of course, especially if you happen to have an event that needs a speaker or you know somebody who might, I'd love to hear from you because we're always looking for speaking opportunities. So the podcasts are all there, the books are there, and speaking is also available as well.
Amazing. We'll make sure to put all relevant links in the description as well so people can access them in an easy way. And I can only support everyone who would be interested in reading your books and listening to you, because you know, it's not just your story that's absolutely fascinating. I think the perspective and the outlook that you have, it's something that is really worth people's attention. So yeah, I would strongly encourage everyone to get to meet you through the different outlets you have.
Great, I appreciate that.
Of course. And thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your words and sharing your story and sharing your thoughts with me. I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity. And I really hope that we'll be able to, to be able to speak again and to discuss some other topics that I would love to pick your brain on.
Sure. Just let me know when. I'm glad to help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Again, fantastic pleasure. I'm really excited about that we made that happen. And have a great day. And hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Well, you take care, and I'm looking forward to seeing this go live.
Same, definitely. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.